If you've ever watched someone stay in a genuinely harmful relationship, or maybe you've even found yourself trapped in one, you know exactly the kind of confusion it brings. But today, we're going to put the judgment aside and look at the hard science. We're going to see exactly how trauma bonds form, how they persist, and how the brain's own survival mechanisms can accidentally lock us into cycles of abuse. There is absolutely no victim blaming here, just brain science, empathy, and a clear path to healing. Let's get into it.
Why can't you just leave? Man, it's literally the most common, culturally pervasive question asked of anyone stuck in a toxic dynamic. Society kind of just assumes that staying is a choice, right? Like it's a lack of self-esteem or some sort of character flaw. But the clinical reality? It's entirely different. As you'll see today, the inability to just walk away is not a failure of willpower. Not at all. It is a profound, deeply rooted neurobiological response. Your brain is reacting exactly how it was built to react to extreme stress and conditioning.
Okay, let's dive into this. What exactly is a trauma bond? Dr. Judith Herman has extensively documented this phenomenon, and she knows that a trauma bond happens when the person who is terrifying you is also the exact same person who comforts you. Your brain gets completely crossed wires. It begins to confuse the intensity of survival panic with the intensity of love. You develop this deep sympathy and attachment to the very person harming you simply because of the cyclical, unpredictable nature of their behavior.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the biology of the trap, then contrast everyday habits with traumatic defenses, and walk through the blueprint of abuse. After that, we'll explore the emotional toll and the protest phase, and finally, we'll cover actionable steps for breaking those chains and rewiring the brain.
Section 1. The biology of the trap. Or, in other words, the neuroscience of staying.
Let's think about a woman named Claire and her partner Mark. Mark essentially operates on a 60-40 split. 60% of the time, he is spectacular. We're talking triggering massive highs of dopamine and oxytocin. But 40% of the time, he's abusive, plunging Claire into brutal lows of cortisol and adrenaline. Now, Claire isn't weak. She stays because she is constantly chasing that 60%. And this brilliantly illustrates a concept called intermittent reinforcement. The contrast between sheer terror and euphoric relief creates a very real chemical dependency. It's just like a slot machine. Your brain becomes chemically addicted to the unpredictable relief from the pain that the other person caused.
Section 2. Habits versus defenses, specifically looking at traumatic defenses.
To really understand this trap, Dr. Brad Bowens points out that we have to contrast normal habits with traumatic defenses. Normal habits just feel familiar, right? They align with how we see ourselves, and we usually pick them up from our caregivers. But traumatic defenses are a whole different ballgame. When trauma occurs, the brain uses dissociation just to survive. It literally disconnects the logical, cognitive memory of the trauma from the excruciating emotional pain it caused. And because the brain completely avoids linking that logical memory to the emotional pain, the experience is never actually processed or integrated. No mastery is achieved. And this traps the person in a repetitive loop of maladaptive behavior. You just keep repeating the cycle because your brain is desperately trying to protect you from feeling the full weight of that trauma. So it keeps you stuck in a pattern that feels dangerously familiar instead of letting you shift to a conscious, adaptive choice.
Section 3. The blueprint of abuse. Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is just how predictable a trauma bond actually is.
These toxic relationships, they aren't random at all. They follow a highly specific blueprint. It starts off incredibly fast and euphoric with stage 1, love bombing, which completely lowers your guards. That rapidly builds to stage 2, trust and dependency. But then, the whiplash hits. Stage 3 introduces criticism and devaluation, where the target starts accepting the blame. Stage 4 is gaslighting, which just destroys your sense of reality. As the cycle slows down and gets so much heavier, we hit stage 5, resignation. Then stage 6, a complete and total loss of self. And finally, stage 7 locks you into emotional addiction, literally craving the return of their affection just to survive the loop. To help you actually spot this in the real world, let's look at some concrete signs for those first 4 stages. Early on, you might experience extreme, over-the-top flattery. Later, you'll start to notice moving goalposts, where no matter what you do to please them, the rules suddenly change. And if you dare to stand up and challenge the abuse, you face reactive abuse. That's where the abuser completely flips the script and claims that you are the one abusing them. It's a systematic dismantling of your reality. By the time you reach stages 5 and 6, severe identity erosion has set in. And I really want you to hear this. If you are in this stage, you are not weak. You are simply out of emotional and often social and financial reserves.
The constant criticism and isolation completely deplete your capacity to resist. Your self-esteem is just at rock bottom. The inability to leave at this point is a direct result of profound relationship burnout. It is not a character flaw.
Section 4. The toll and the protest phase. Let's look at what actually happens the moment you decide to break free.
Because making the decision to leave, that's just the beginning of a massive neurobiological battle. You face a brutal both and reality. You can know with absolute, logical certainty that the relationship is destroying you, and at the exact same time, you can find yourself sobbing on the floor because your nervous system is absolutely screaming for the dopamine hit of their return. Both are true. Missing them doesn't mean the relationship was meant to be. Actually, scratch that. It just means your brain is going through a severe neurobiological detox.
This detox phase is clinically known as the protest phase, and it's rooted in John Bowlby's attachment theory. Think about an infant separated from a caregiver. They protest, they scream, they thrash, because to a baby, separation literally means death. In a trauma bond, your mammalian brain registers the breakup as the exact same life-threatening emergency. That obsessive rumination, the physical chest pain, the sheer panic, that is survival terror.
Section 5. Breaking chains and rewiring. Let's move forward and see how this builds into a real, actionable plan for recovery.
So, how do we actually fix this? How do we replace these maladaptive patterns with healthy choices? Step 1 is absolute no contact. Listen, you cannot heal from a slot machine addiction while you are still living inside the casino. Every time you check their social media, you're pulling the lever. Step 2 is expecting that protest phase. Name the panic when it hits and just ride the wave. Step 3 is regulating the nervous system. You have to replace those chaotic dopamine and cortisol spikes with steady, somatic practices, like deep pressure therapy or exercise, just to metabolize all that trapped survival energy.
Once you're out, you've got to build what Dr. Abby Medcalf calls earned security through corrective experiences. These are repeated, intentional interactions that teach your nervous system that closeness can actually be safe. You can build this through therapy, having a reliably safe adult who doesn't judge you. You can build it through secure romance, where a partner is consistently warm and responsive. And you can build it through sustaining community, friends, mentors, and support groups who offer genuine emotional safety. So the crucial point here is that rewiring the brain takes time. Day 1 is purely about safety and no contact. The first 4 weeks, those are just about surviving the acute neurobiological withdrawal of that protest phase. Months 1 to 3 are for therapy and finally settling your nervous system down. And true, deep psychological recovery, healing the underlying wounds that made you vulnerable in the first place, well, that often takes a year or more. Earned security requires repeated, safe evidence.
I want to leave you with this final thought today. You are not weak for staying, but you are absolutely strong enough to leave. The withdrawal will eventually end. So what small step can you take today to give your nervous system a new, safe evidence template? Whether it's reaching out to a therapist, calling a trusted friend, or literally just blocking a phone number, you have the power to take back your life. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to be endlessly compassionate with yourself on your healing journey.